Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Dimples Show. Yes, video 4. Today is a very momentous day. It is September 11th. It is approximately 8:27. For few people that like to tell military time, it is 2027. And this is the day when the Twin Towers unfortunately met their demise. Approximately 2,000 to 3,000 individuals have lost their lives in all 4 attacks. You had the 2 buildings in New York, you had the Pentagon, and then you had one that crashed in Pennsylvania, presumably to have targeted the White House. So I'd like to take a good minute of silence as we um, remember those that have lost their lives this day, innocent lives, many innocent lives, that, quite frank, uh, not a million years deserve the demise that they had today. So let's just take a moment of silence for that. All right, to start with today's show, I'd like to make a little public announcement. Stephen King, yes, he's gonna be the figure for today. Every single day, I'm gonna choose a public figure as a model that we could model after for the rest of the day. So I decided to choose Stephen King. He's inspired me to write many short stories. I've written about 14 in my lifetime, and every single one of them was a complete success. Didn't get any of them published. However, I have shared them with friends and family. A majority of them were um, thinking. Some of them were sad, um, with lots of parallelism in there. Um, yeah, I mean they're very decent stories because of this guy. Yep. I'll put a sample of all my stories in the descriptions down below if you want to read it. It's about 2 individuals. One, a rich man who owns a company. The other one, a man that lives on the streets that kind of lives day by day, uncertain what's gonna happen. So yeah, he'll be the public figure that we're gonna model after today. One of the very first things I like to do in my Sunday mornings is, of course, to drink my morning coffee. I didn't make it yet. I'm gonna make it right after I make this small snippet here. Uh, the next session, I'm gonna be over there on my couch talking about whatever we'll be talking about for today. Nothing interesting is gonna happen, as far as I know. My parents are out on business. My sister is at export. My brother's still sleeping upstairs, so I'm pretty much on my own. All right, so how do we know? Yes, today is September 11th. This is the day in which the Twin Towers in New York, 2001, this day, unfortunately, was struck by 2 terrorist attacks, 2 hijacked aircrafts. And then, of course, we have the Pentagon that was struck on the side following after that. And then, of course, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania that was presumably targeting the White House as another target, which would have been devastating. Um, there are many conspiracy theories and a lot of speculation on the authenticity of the facts that were received that day. From why didn't the Air Force respond correctly? Why didn't the FAA do anything? Because they could have done other stuff to prevent at least some of these attacks from occurring. But all that's just conjecture, and all that's just to kind of ignore that and just kind of centralize on the day itself. On it's this day of it's a day of infamy. Let's just face it. About 3,000 people have lost their lives in total that day. Many people were awestruck. I remember my sister was just 5 years old at the time. They're sitting in this room, and my mom was doing their hair. I was in a little baby seat at the time, so I don't remember this. But they were watching Arthur, and then all of a sudden, all the stations, all the channels went blank and patched to a news channel that showed what was going on in the country. and she remembers seeing the plane hit the building in the second tower, and she remembers seeing the smoke in the first tower, and then all the schools I think most of the schools in the country, if not all, were shut down at the time. All air flights were obviously shut down too. It was a day that this country was attacked twice by a foreign power. You have Pearl Harbor, and now you have this one. But this one perhaps is the most devastating because it was not just centralized on military strategic planning, but it was focused on primarily civilians. 3,000 civilians have lost their lives, innocent individuals, and that's something that cannot be taken lightly. So I'm glad that I took the time this morning to make a moment of silence to honor those that have lost their lives and the heroes that have lost their lives, to try to help those that were in those buildings while the buildings were still on fire. I know a lot about the conspiracies, though, about they're saying that there were bombs implanted before the fact, and that the Pentagon, the way that the blast dimensions, how it doesn't completely add up to a 747. But it's again, it shouldn't be on how it was done, when, why. It should be focused on the individuals lost, innocent people that, to them, that day when they put on their socks that morning, they didn't know that something like that was going to happen. They just thought it was going to be another average day. But unfortunately, it wasn't, and lots of people lost a lot of family members. So it's extremely unfortunate. I'm going to include a little snippet of a small segment of a summary of what happened in 9/11 right after this.
It all started at 8:45 on a clear Tuesday morning. We had a live camera up on what looked like a smoking slash across one of the World Trade Center towers. A passenger plane had flown into it, and I remember some of us here at CNN thinking this was some sort of freak event. Then a second plane flew into the other tower. That was at 9:03 a.m., and at that point there was this deepening dread in everyone. Something was wrong in a way we'd never seen before. Airports, bridges, tunnels in New York and New Jersey shut down. Within 30 minutes, President George W. Bush said we were under an apparent terrorist attack. And minutes after that, every airport in the country was closed. That had never happened before. It wasn't over, though. At 9:43 a.m., a third passenger jet crashed into the Pentagon. Dark smoke rolled up from that part of that huge building. All eyes and many cameras were on that and the two burning towers in New York. And as all of us watched at 10:05, one of those towers gave way where it was smoking, the top part crushing down on the rest of it and sending up debris in boiling gray clouds. 5 minutes later, part of the Pentagon collapsed, and a fourth hijacked jet crashed in a rural part of Pennsylvania. The White House, the United Nations, the state and justice departments, the World Bank, all evacuated. America-bound Atlantic flights were rerouted to Canada, and the second Trade Center tower came down at 10:28. So many closings, evacuations, shutdowns. Except for emergency response teams, the heroes of 9/11, the country virtually stopped what it was doing and gathered around TV screens. The president appeared just after 1 p.m. and asked Americans to pray, and there wasn't much else we could do. The destruction was more or less done around 10:30. It was less than 2 hours from the first crash, but the change it inflicted was immeasurable. More Americans were killed on September 11, 2001 than on the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. And when President Bush addressed the nation that night at 8:30, his tone was one of sympathy, resolve, and warning to anyone who'd planned or supported the attacks.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
In the difficult days that followed, we learned that the Al-Qaeda terrorist group led by Osama bin Laden was responsible for all of this. And America's attention and anger turned to Afghanistan, whose Taliban leaders were giving Al-Qaeda a safe place to live and operate. Carl Azus, CNN, Atlanta.